Hello everyone and welcome back to another video on the channel. Today we're going to be talking about the brand new James Wan horror film called Malignant that's coming out in theaters just right now this week, and I believe HBO Max as well. And this movie is an enigma. This movie is something else. So I will be talking about spoilers on the back half of this video. I'll let you guys know when I will be talking about spoilers because I have to talk about some of the absolutely just batshit crazy things that happen in this film in full spoiler fashion because that's just what I need to do for this one. But I do want to talk about this movie before that because this is a film that I think really benefits from the surprise of its twists and its turns and its, unique plot and story, aspects of it that is definitely not, shown in the trailers whatsoever. This movie's trailers were very vague and very, it gave you enough intrigue to want to see the movie, but it didn't give you enough to actually know what the movie's truly about. And so that is what I enjoyed most about this movie, although it is a deeply flawed and kind of a mess of a movie at the same time. And so let's just jump right into the review for this film. So without getting into spoilers, let's get into my negatives of this film first. So the biggest issue with this film, I do believe, is the script and the dialogue. I think there is a lot of corny and cheesy dialogue that just does not work at all. There's a lot of tonally just conflicting things in this film because there's moments where, there's an element of this film that is all based on the cops and based on the investigation of these murders that are happening around, the town or the city that this movie takes place in. And you have this, this woman who's like a kind of a CSI detective type of character. She's, doing the forensics and doing the science behind like all these things. And she'll just have like these random comments that are very, very funny. But like at the same time, the whole movie takes itself so incredibly deadly serious that this tonal mix of these things, these like awkward humorous moments with this like overly serious, line reads, the tone of this movie really conflicts. And I think the problem with this film really is when it comes to James Wan, he said he wanted to go into the horror roots of his career, and his horror roots was Saw. And so there's a lot of aspects of this movie that remind me of Saw, but there's also a lot of aspects that remind me of The Conjuring. And so you take those two movies, those two vastly different tones, and you mash them together, it just does not work. The musical score in this film is very obnoxious. It's very much like Saw. The opening titles of this film reminded me of, the spastic editing from a Saw movie, and the music was straight from a Saw movie. But at the same time, you have moments where, the camera's above the set of the house, and it's, following her as she's running throughout the sets of her house, and it's brilliantly shot, film in a lot of ways like that, like the Conjuring movies, and the way that, it has that, haunted house type feel at the first half of this movie with, the type of camera moves and the type of direction that James Wan has, while also having the editing and the kind of weird musical cues that Saw had. And there's even some needle drops of some like, popular songs that happen in this movie that, again, tonally just does not work in this movie at all. And so I think that is the biggest struggle this movie has. And this is all mainly in the first half of this film. I think the dialogue, especially some of the character work in this film, definitely needed a lot more work, a lot more passes through that script. However, there are aspects of this film that are revealed that kind of recontextualizes the entire film. And for some people, it's going to be so out there that you're going to be off board immediately and you're going to hate it. At the screening that I went to, there's a few people that went with me, and there are some people that just did not like the movie at all. They checked out, they were just done for. And I completely understand that because this movie is kind of insane. This movie goes in a direction that I swear, if anybody on the planet predicts this movie, you are not human. You are simply like a psychic. There's no way anybody can predict the crazy routes that this movie goes down, the crazy rabbit holes, and this weird, concept that this movie has that it really dives into. And that is what I loved about this movie. And so the first half I didn't like too much at all. The second half, I absolutely loved the core concepts of this movie and the crazy swing that this movie made, and it really elevated the whole thing for me to a point where I would recommend seeing this movie for the pure, surprise of what those things are, because it really did shock me. This movie is a very shocking and gory and just intense and just kind of batshit crazy experience that I think people should have. If you're a lover of horror, this is definitely a movie that you should watch. I'm not saying that you'll like the movie necessarily. That will range upon whether or not the concept of a movie can carry it over, the character development and over the dialogue and stuff like that. It's like, if this thing that happens in this movie is not enough for you, and you need that character development and all that sort of stuff, then I get it. But for me, at least, it was enough for me to be intrigued and to really enjoy watching this movie because it's kind of just an absurdly entertaining bad movie. Okay, so now I need to talk about spoilers for this film. So I please implore you guys, please, if you want to see this movie and you want these surprises to surprise you, and you want the story and you want to be invested in the mystery of this movie, because this movie in large part is a mystery. And I think I'll say this about mysteries. There's some sort of mysteries where if you know the information as the audience member and the characters in the movie doesn't know the information, that can kind of be tiresome because you're watching characters try to figure something out that you already know. And the first half makes you think that you know what's going on, but you really don't know what's going on. So in that way, I think that the mystery actually really does work. And so for that aspect of it, for that mystery aspect of it, go see this movie. But if you don't care about spoilers and you want to know the crazy things because you're not a horror fan or for whatever reason, sure, stick onto this video and watch this last half of this video because there's some crazy things in this movie. So let's get into the thing that I've been trying to, talk around this entire video. Let's get into the meat of the spoiler review for this movie. So spoilers from here on out. So what is this movie about? Essentially, it's about Annabelle Wallis's character. She's in an abusive relationship with her husband, and he smashes her head into a wall, and she has had miscarriages in the past, and he's angry about something with her pregnancy, and he's just a terrible, terrible person. And so after her head is smashed in the wall, she starts seeing these things. She starts seeing this creature that you find out is this character called Gabriel, and you're starting to unveil who this Gabriel character is. She's having these dreams of seeing people get murdered, and she just can't stop it from happening. She's kind of in the background and watching these horrific things happen, watching this Gabriel character brutally murder these people. And so that is what you get from the trailers of this film, and you kind of get to see in her past there's some videos where she's talking to Gabriel as an imaginary friend, and you think, okay, there's some sort of connection between her and Gabriel with her past. So what is that connection? Well, Gabriel is a parasitic Siamese twin type thing, conjoined twin, that is attached to the back of her body that was cut off and suppressed into her skull for years, for 30 years. And when her head was smashed into that wall and her skull was fractured, Gabriel crawled its way out of the back of her head and started killing people. Yeah, that is Gabriel. That is the crazy thing that happens in this movie. So essentially how it works is when she is, seeing these murders happening, her mind is being suppressed. She's in a mental prison, and she can kind of break through that and see what Gabriel is doing with her body and how Gabriel is walking backwards because Gabriel's on the back of her head, Voldemort in the first Harry Potter movie. And it's very uncomfortable the way that this thing moves. And at first you think it's one of those cliched horror movie from The Ring where you have a character that's bending their bones and the bones are cracking, and same thing with the Lights Out had that same sort of creature design, and The Grudge, and all these different movies use the same sort of cliched thing. But this one is not cliched because it's just so disgusting. I'm telling you, this is some of the most uncomfortable body horror I've seen in a while. And I did watch Brand New Cherry Flavor. I know somebody commented in my videos a few weeks ago to watch Brand New Cherry Flavor, and that has some great body horror in it. This one was even more uncomfortable than that. I'm telling you, the backstory of this thing, on this little girl's back, this thing with little arms, and that's crawling out, that is so, the way it talks through radios, and it's so absurdly gross. It's like I said, this is from the director of Saw. This is the first time that James Wan has made a movie that felt like the goriness and the disgustingness of the original Saw movie. This is the first time James Wan has done that, since, he's gone into the more haunted house type movies. So you think that this is some sort of supernatural element, and in some ways it is, because Gabriel can still control electronics for some reason. I think that aspect of Gabriel's character really doesn't make sense. I guess Gabriel needs some sort of way to communicate, but the whole point of controlling electronics is more like a supernatural thing, so it's kind of a red herring because Gabriel really is not some supernatural spirit or the devil. It's this her conjoined brother, her twin brother on the back of her head, essentially. It's very, very strange, and if you've been listening to what I'm saying, you will either think it sounds really interesting, or maybe I'm not doing it justice in describing it, or whatever may be the case. Either way, it is insane. This thing crawling around, walking backwards, doing all these flips and moving forwards and backwards and all these crazy things, and this weapon that this, slasher villain has is like this trophy that his doctor had, or her doctor had at one point, and so he's using it to kill people. And this Gabriel character, the way it moves is so just really, really cool. Like, this movie has some really cool horror elements. Like I said, there's a shot of, viewing from the rooftop looking down at Annabelle Wallis, running through her house. That was very great cinematography. That was really cool, camera work for a horror movie. But the way that this thing maneuvers is one of the cooler, I guess, slasher villains I've seen in quite some time. This last half of this movie is insanely bloody. The prison sequence is insane. And so despite the lack of character development, there's several characters in this movie. There's two main cop characters and then that third, CSI type character, the forensic scientist girl that has a one line that is just really hysterical. But there's, the main girl played by Annabelle Wallis and her sister, and then her mom who is tied into the whole thing, or her real mom, and then her adoptive mom, and all these characters. And they try to do a storyline with the two sisters of them, like, accepting that, she doesn't need flesh and blood to be happy. She has had her sister this entire time, whether or not she is, her own blood, whatever. That whole storyline, it kind of worked, it kind of didn't. I kind of cared at the end when it was a red herring where her sister was shot in the head and the mom was, strangled to death by Gabriel, but you found out that it was, a mental prison that Annabelle Wallis put, Gabriel in at one point. Like, that was pretty cool, flipping of that power and using that power and that mental ability that she had the entire time that was just suppressed by Gabriel. That was cool to see. But overall, the character development, the cops, I really didn't care about the cop or the romance between, the cop and the sister, or like that was trying to do. I honestly don't even know what happened to the cop by the end of this movie. Like I said, it's kind of messy. This movie is a really great concept in a bad movie. I honestly probably really did enjoy this movie, or at least watching this movie and the craziness of this movie, more than Old. But I think it's very comparable. I think this movie does at times feel like a Shyamalan movie. It has some points that are so bad that it's laughable, but it also has some really intense scenes and some really inventive horror, an original idea in this, really crazy slasher movie that was really unique, that I really did enjoy watching. So this was definitely a movie. That's what I have to say about this movie. It was an experience that I think was definitely worth watching the first time through. I think on second watch, since I know the mystery and I know these aspects of it, yes, it'll be cool to see everything in the last, act of the movie. But is it worth sitting through the first half of the movie again? I'm not quite sure, but I did enjoy watching it the one time I did, and the experience of it was quite insane. So I'm hoping you guys have seen Malignant, so I didn't spoil and ruin this crazy aspects of it to you guys. But if you have not, maybe you will want to see it after my explanation, or maybe you won't. Who knows? If you did see it, let me know what you thought of it. Did you like the crazy twist with Gabriel? Did you like the movie in general with how crazy the last act was? I really want to know your guys' thoughts in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video and this review, leave a like and subscribe to the channel to see more reviews just like this one. I'll have reviews up. I honestly don't know what I'm going to review for next week. Maybe I'll do, like 10 movies I missed reviewing for. Maybe I'll talk about brand new cherry flavor. I will be talking about a lot of things for Halloween, for my 13 days of Halloween series starting in October. So definitely subscribe to the channel to see all of those things. So thanks guys for watching this video, and hope to see you all in my next one.